she's like sitting outside
Yeah.
and looking up at the tree and taking photos of it. And
This is like a great example of what it means to live slowly. Like to really
Yeah.
stop and smell the
yeah,
roses.
absolutely.
Stop and take a picture of a tree.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And this is the Fifth Star Podcast, a podcast where we are trying to find our next 5-star rated movie. And when we find that 5-star rated movie, this podcast will be flushed down the toilet.
Oh, that's what I thought you were going to say too. So today we're reviewing Perfect Days, which is a movie directed by Wim Wenders. And it is a slice of life movie that follows the day in the life of a public toilet cleaner in Tokyo. And you know, we've both written down our ratings that we gave it secretly on this whiteboard. And for fun, we like to guess what we think each other's going to give it. I think, Jamie, you probably really love this movie. So I thought that this might actually be the first 5.0 that we get on this show. We go out of 5 stars. So
Are you going to guess 5.0?
I think you're either between a 4.0 or 5.0. I'm going to guess you gave it a 4.5.
Okay.
Yeah. But I really would not be surprised if you gave this a 5.0.
Exactly what I gave Zone of Interest.
Yeah. What do you think I gave it?
Well, I know you don't really like slice of life movies, so I think you gave it a 3.
Okay, 3.0. Question mark?
Oh yeah, sorry, question mark. Wow.
We're going to reveal our ratings after we kind of give our initial thoughts, and then we'll go into spoilers. But if you guys have seen this, let us know. Comment below what you gave it out of 5. We'd love to hear kind of your take also.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, what did you think of Perfect Days?
Well, I really liked the main character. Right off the bat, he is, I don't know, he barely says any lines in the whole movie, but he is somehow so admirable, I guess. Like just watching him go through his day to day where he's a toilet cleaner. He's like the bottom tier of like any job hierarchy. And yet he does everything with excellence and dignity. And it's so hard not to like have respect for him.
Yeah.
Even though he's doing such like a job that doesn't earn him much respect,
Yeah.
if at all. Like he is ignored by people. He's dismissed by people.
Yeah, like there's this one great moment where he sets out the little sign in front of the toilet because it's being cleaned, and a guy just like stumbles and like kicks it over.
Yeah.
Doesn't even say sorry, like doesn't even acknowledge it. And he just like quietly goes and picks it
Picks
sets
it back up.
Yeah.
Doesn't complain. And everything he does like so thoroughly, like he respects the toilet. But yeah, I really admired him as a main character. I was like, this is a great protagonist. Which I guess is pretty important for a slice of life movie. We're pretty
Yeah.
much only getting to see the world from his eyes. So you better make him likable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, oftentimes people say like as an example of like a very low end job in society, we use janitor.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is not just a janitor of a school or something. He's a public toilet janitor, which
Yeah.
is like, can you think of a more thankless job? And yet he does it with excellence. He really is committed to it. And his coworker, like, obviously is just treats it like what most people would treat it like,
Yeah.
right? Like he's just like on his phone while like cleaning the toilet and stuff like that. So they show you kind of that juxtaposition. So
Yeah.
I agree. He's very, very likable. He also, I think for me, this film, what I really liked about it was that it kind of is about like appreciating the little things in life. You know, this guy, Hiyama is the character's name. He comes out, he wakes up, he puts his stuff away, and then, you know, lives kind of a very simplistic lifestyle, waters his plants, and then gets ready. And then the first thing he does every morning when he steps out the door is like take a moment, pause, like look up at the sky and smile.
Appreciate
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah. And, you know, how many times do we just like open the door and just rush out, you know, because we're in a hurry to get to work, you know, like that's what I did this morning, right? But then just taking that like slight moment to like pause and stop and And he does it like, he gets into his car and then he picks a cassette tape because he's, kind of old school, right?
Did you think like, what time period is this?
No,
when he pulled the cassettes out?
I feel like, it kind of comes across like, yeah, he's just an older guy because he's middle-aged. So I didn't feel like it took place a long time ago. But yeah, you could tell he's kind of a little bit stuck in the past. But, it picks out what song he's going to play, and he's just like listening to music on his way to work. And, he always like looks out the window as he passes by this like big tower and kind of admires
Skytree.
Yeah, Skytree, yeah. And he also loves trees, like real trees. And, so it's all about kind of taking a pause. And, this place takes place in Tokyo, in a big, massive city, yet he's connected with nature. And during lunch, he's like sitting outside and looking up at the tree and taking photos of it. And
you're right. Like, this is like a great example of what it means to live slowly. Like, to really stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stop and take a picture of a tree.
Yeah.
He like is so good about really just appreciating each moment and not like just speeding through life like we do now with like our phones. And
it presents it in a way that's very positive.
Yeah.
Like, I think the director is interesting because the director's German.
Yeah.
Right? And he's telling the story about...
You wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah. Because it does feel like it's told by someone who's spent a lot of time in Japan. And like, is very submersed in that culture. And there's obviously a great appreciation for that culture. And yeah, like that main character seems to almost be put forward to us as like a model to inspire us. And I think it kind of does that. It does show you like the positive way, the benefits of not being so connected to all the technology and how fast paced everything is, but being able to like step back and appreciate things.
Yeah.
And, so I thought that was great. I really liked that part of the movie also. I was actually listening to an interview with the director, and he actually talks about this element, and the person interviewing him was asking him like, oh, so it's weird, are you like anti-technology because you like made like a documentary using 3D cameras and stuff like that? And then the director corrects him and says, no, I'm not anti-technology, I'm just pro like simplicity. Like, he's like, the point that he said he was trying to get across was it's about like reducing things down to their essential elements. And then he said the technology is not the essential thing.
Yeah.
So even with the music, he's like, you almost think like, is he potentially saying like, oh, we have to have everything analog? But he's like, the director said that it wasn't about that. It was more about the fact that he just loves music, and it doesn't matter what format that music is heard in. What's essential is the music itself, right? And he's like, what's the point of having like this really amazing sound system, but you just don't have the time and space in your day to actually listen to it?
Yeah.
Like, that is just wasted. Whereas like this guy who has like old analog video, like cassette tapes, the fact that he takes the time on his way to work to like put in the music and appreciate it, like, it's so much more valuable.
I think I totally agree. Like, after watching this movie, I got in the car and I like turned on
Nice.
What was it? House of the Rising Sun?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I immediately like turned that on and I was like rolling the windows down and I was just driving and like the sun was setting, I think.
Nice.
And I was just like, wow, it's such a vibe.
Yeah.
It's so pleasant to just kind of experience it while you're on a journey and sort of view your life as, more than just, oh, I need to get this done, or that's kind of the way I think our culture experiences life, right?
Yeah.
And instead, like, if we just pause and take a moment to like let the wind blow in our hair or like listen to like a really good song and appreciate it, it's just so much richer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think that's what that movie really was expressing to me, was that like there's so much richness if we just kind of like slow down.
Yeah.
Have the discipline to be still and quiet.
Yeah, because it definitely is a choice he's making. It was not by accident. He, like at one point there's a conversation with his niece, and we'll unpack more of that. I think we have to do later in the spoiler section, but she mentions like Spotify, and he's like, oh, is that like a store? And then she like laughs, right? Like he's really disconnected kind of from where modern life is. And
he has a dumb phone and everything.
Yeah. And, you know, he spends his nights going to sleep not like watching TV, or I don't even think he has a TV in his house. But he like reads books, right? And he goes and buys a used book like when he's done with that one, and, you know, buys one book at a time. And so it's just like these very intentional acts that he kind of takes to live slowly, to give him the space. Again, Vin Vendors, he in the interview like uses the phrase that Hirayama, the character, is master of his own time. And you know, that's kind of interesting. Like we all have time, but you can be mastered by it, or you can master that time, but it takes like, you almost have to like wrangle time down, you know, to be able to like use it for your good. And because he says like, you know, we have all these tools that are supposed to buy us more time, right? And make things more efficient so we have more time, but like, are we actually using that time, or are we being used by those tools, right? Like our phones, right? That are, you know, so efficient, but like we get so sucked into them.
And we hate emptiness too.
Yeah,
we hate
you're right.
it when there's like a gap. We want to fill it with something, and so we find a tool to like fill that gap, so that we're not just like doing nothing for 30 minutes.
Yeah. Which, interestingly, is also maybe the way you might feel watching the movie. Because the movie is very slow.
It is.
It is very, like, meticulous and kind of methodical, repetitive at points. And it gives you, like, that slowness. It kind of makes you feel it. And it kind of can either make you appreciate it or potentially be frustrating, because you're like, oh, like this is just taking too long, like I want to just get on with it, you know. And so
no,
maybe
I felt
in a way,
that but then I felt convicted about that, because I was like, how many times do I go on YouTube and just put it at 2x speed? Like, are you watching at 2x speed right now?
I know.
I bet you are.
And you know, that's the way I watch my YouTube videos. But you can't watch this movie on 2x, right?
No, you can't. You can't watch movies on 2x, but
ooh,
that's coming.
That's kind of one beautiful thing potentially about movies, is that like it forces us to like take
slow
it at its
down.
own pace, the way it was intended to be consumed.
You're probably right. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and so it's kind of challenging in that way. It is also kind of a long movie. It's like, I think over 2 hours, or
I
2
think it
hours.
was pushing 2 hours.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily speed up at any point. You know, he kind of has like this set routine. Like every day is pretty much the same kind of thing, and we kind of see that over multiple days. But the one thing that happens is that one day his niece shows up out of the blue, and like it seems like he hasn't seen her in a really long time, and it's kind of like this big like thing that interjects into his normal routine. And so, you know, that's kind of like when the movie picks up a little bit. But it still isn't necessarily like fast paced or anything like that. But it is kind of then him kind of re-engaging with her and kind of about their time together. But I thought another part of this movie, another theme that I thought was really interesting, was the fact that he's not married. It doesn't seem like he's ever been married. And at one point, it's even kind of said of him like, oh, aren't you like lonely because you're like single? But you don't really get that feeling from him at all. Like he goes from one thing to the next. He goes to like restaurants and spends time, you know, kind of chatting up with like the restaurant owners or like the other patrons. Or he always stops by the film store or the bookstore and kind of has these like small interactions. And you kind of get the sense that like, you know, even though he's single, like he has like a full life through all these other different kinds of people in his life. And I think that's like a really good, important thing for a film to highlight, because I do think a lot of times in society, like we kind of do equate singleness with like, oh, you're just alone.
That's interesting, because I took it as like he was super introverted.
Okay.
And like super, maybe even like socially awkward.
Oh.
Because there's like a few awkward moments where he, like that lady on the park bench that he keeps seeing, he'll keep like kind of like smiling and nodding to her and then being like, that was weird.
Yeah.
Like you can tell he's like, that was uncomfortable.
But she was
And then
kind of like a
she was
little
kind of
weird.
strange.
Yeah.
But then, like, even when he's interacting, like, with the lady at the bar or whatever, it sort of seems like he's a little uncomfortable. And so I took it as, like, oh, he's just, you know, extremely introverted, but he has his spots that he's, like, comfortable in, that he goes to, like, every day. Like, he's a regular in all of these spots because he's found, like, his comfort zone, and it sort of feels like he was afraid to get out of his comfort zone. Like, even when his niece shows up, you can tell that he's kind of like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
I don't know about this.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, this is kind of like outside of my comfort.
Yeah. It takes him a little while to like warm up to that. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I felt like that was his character, you know. And even like that so his coworker who's like, you know, always on his phone
And he's
has
like
a
young
girlfriend
guy.
or something. And
He has a girl he's trying to pursue.
yeah. And so at one point they like take his van. And you can tell he's so uncomfortable around both of them.
Yeah.
Like, he's just completely quiet in the back. Like, this is so weird. But he does it anyway because he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He gives him a ride.
Yeah. And he also gives him money for the date, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He really is such a likable guy. And it's interesting because the whole thing with the awkward lady at the park bench, I kind of thought there was like a theme throughout this movie about like connecting with people. And it almost is like the fact that he is a public toilet like cleaner and someone who is overlooked in society, what I was picking up was like that he's actually able to acknowledge and see the people who are also like outcasts and ostracized in society. Like it takes one to know one, right? So when he's sitting there at the park bench, you have this other lady who sits there by herself, like eating also, and because she probably doesn't have friends to eat with, and she does seem kind of socially awkward, and so, but he does notice her, right? Like he sees her, and he, like other people might just walk by, and he actually like nods and bows to her in acknowledgement, right? Same thing with like the homeless guy in the park who's just being crazy and homeless. Like, you know, we often might associate like someone like just living in the park or whatever, but everyone else might just seems to kind of be walking by him, but this guy, he always kind of like takes a moment to stop. Yeah, it takes note. And even that, like the fact that maybe that's the only person who acknowledged that homeless guy that day, right? And like, what could that mean for him, right? And like, how hard would it be to just live a life where you feel like nobody acknowledges you? So yeah, I thought that was also kind of interesting. Like, not only stop and smell the roses, but stop and smell the people. I don't know.
Pay attention.
Yeah. You know, just take that moment.
That. Yeah.
Because there is a moment where we see the homeless guy again in like a busy street, and he's just like right in the middle of the street, potentially in a dangerous situation, but like all these people are just walking right by him. But Hiyama, she just actually pauses and kind of is looking at him and is like fixated on him, you know, taking note.
And he's used to being ignored too. So, yeah. That's a good point. It's interesting too how Hirayama does a really good job of kind of displaying Japanese culture, at least like maybe more traditional Japanese culture. But like we said earlier, everything he does with excellence and everything he does is like, you know, I'm going to do the best I can and be respectful. And it's sort of like that, it's cool to see because in like an honor shame culture, he could be like ashamed that he's like a toilet cleaner or whatever.
Yeah.
But instead he's like, no, I'm going to take on that like Japanese honor and like do my job with like dignity or whatever.
Yeah.
So the whole time I thought, because they kept cutting back to Skytree, which Skytree is like a representation of Japanese culture, but then also like the future and modernism and how Japan is always looking forward. And so I took it as like, oh, he represents like traditional Japan.
Oh, okay.
And then everything around him represents like future Japan or whatever. But then like as the movie kept going, I started to see like less and less of that theme. But I still thought it was really interesting, especially after learning that the director was a German guy.
Yeah.
I was like, I totally thought this movie was about like praising traditional Japan.
Yeah. So the backstory of how this movie came to be was it was kind of during the pandemic, and then this director, and he's very high accomplished director, like he's done Paris, Texas, which neither of us have seen. We did want to review it.
It's on the
at
list.
some point. Yeah, it's on the list. But he also then did another really kind of seminal movie called Wings of Desire, which I did get to see, and I thought it was good. But yeah, like, so that director was basically in the pandemic, and then was trying to figure out what his next project was going to be coming out of the pandemic. And he actually got kind of commissioned to like come to Tokyo to do like a documentary on these public toilets, because these public toilets were apparently part of like the kind of build up towards the Olympics in 2020. And like around 15 like world renowned Japanese architects were asked to like design these public toilets as kind of like
they're so cool.
Like a sign of hospitality for like the world that was going to come and, like descend upon Tokyo for the Olympics. But then the pandemic happened, and then like, the stadiums were empty and everyone was in quarantine, and so all these things were locked down. So really, like, a lot of this just went unnoticed. But it was kind of like reclaiming these public spaces, and even what are typically cast off as like the dirtiest kind of parts of our society, like, were beautified, right, and actually meant to like bring beauty into like our spaces and our world. And they became like these art pieces, right? Like, these are like people who've built skyscrapers and all these things, but they focused all the attention to this like little bathroom, on the corner of somewhere. Yeah. And they're really, you see it in the film. Like, you see them as like characters in the film, and like ones that are like transparent until you like go in and turn the thing.
Yeah.
And then it becomes opaque. And
it's
then,
so cool.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, but
that's beautiful because you can like see through and still be a part of the park. It's not like an eyesore. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like integrated in, and then like even as you're sitting there on the toilet in a glass box that's kind of opaque, but you still get the shadows of the trees and all that kind of stuff, like with the sun kind of casting those shadows, upon that, and so you're sitting there in some way still engaged with nature and connected to nature. And for me, like growing up in New York City, like I think there's something I really appreciate about that. Like it is really easy to just kind of keep your head down on the street level and just be so consumed in the hustle and bustle. But in this film, there is that theme of him constantly looking up, right? And just lifting your eye line to get above like resting, sea level.
Yeah.
All of a sudden kind of reminds you like, oh yeah, there is beauty in a big concrete city. There are trees. And like New York City had that too, And whenever I took the moment to actually like stop and actually look up, and those kind of moments like really bring you a lot of peace. And maybe that's all a metaphor for just our lives, right?
Dang.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, when I went to Tokyo in 2021.
Yeah, because you've been to Tokyo for the Olympics to work.
They had those bathrooms, and oh my gosh, they were like the cleanest bathrooms. So nice.
Did you actually use one of these public bathrooms then?
I did recognize the big round one.
Whoa.
Because this is in the Shibuya district, and I only went there one day.
Okay.
So I was like in that district. I think I was only there for one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I might have. I don't really remember, but I just remember every bathroom I went into was like clean and like a pleasant experience. And like the stalls are so private because they're like floor to ceiling doors, and they have the like, all of them have the like lock with the red so that nobody's gonna like be pushing on your door to see if it's being taken. And I mean, those toilets are so cool with all the bidets.
Yeah,
every single toilet has one of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then honestly, Tokyo as a city is so clean, at least while I was there, which was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it was so clean, never found trash anywhere, and there's like no trash cans either.
Oh.
So you're expected to like hold on and be responsible for your trash if you have any.
And everyone actually follows that, right?
Yeah, and it encourages people to not carry trash around.
Yeah.
And then you come back here and it's like, if we got rid of all of the trash cans, it would be a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it'll take a couple generations for us to get there if we do that. But yeah, and so he went to Japan to start this documentary, and then was just really intrigued by the fact that there was this kind of like big public project.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah, that went unnoticed. But then he never ended up, I think, making that documentary because he then got caught up in this story of like telling a story, a narrative story about like a public toilet cleaner. Yeah.
Public
cleaner. Yeah. And so then that's how beautiful Perfect Days ended up coming into existence.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, he like
Very
wrote
cool.
it and then got the director the actor on board. So
it made me want to go back to Japan so bad.
Yeah.
The whole time I was watching it, I was like, I just want to go back. Oh my gosh. It's such a beautiful city.
Yeah, I know. I've only been in the airport, so I have to go.
You have to go.
Yeah. Any thoughts before we get into revealing?
Let's reveal.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I was like, this movie has everything Jamie loves. It's like about, disconnecting and, it has music. Like music is such a big part of this. You love Tokyo. You spend time there. So I'm like, I think this might be a 5.0, but I guess 4.5.
Am I revealing?
Yeah, you're revealing first. And you gave it a 3.5.
I feel bad.
3.5 out of 5. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I could be easily talked into a 4.
Okay.
I think because I was teetering between 4 and 3.5.
Okay. So
what did you give it?
You guessed
it sounds like you liked it.
You guessed that I gave it a 3.0 and I gave it a 3.5 also.
Wow.
Yeah, we agreed. Wow. Well,
So,
I was between a 3.0 and a 3.5 actually.
oh, okay.
But it was because, and we're gonna get into spoilers.
Yep.
But it was because of the whole ending. Like, just there were things about the ending that kind of
it was too loose.
Didn't really land for me.
Yeah.
And yeah,
the threads weren't packaged together
Yeah.
at the end like I wanted them to be.
Yeah. And so I was actually right at the end, I kind of like the taste that was left in my mouth was like a 3.0. But then the more I kind of thought about it and kind of pondered on the film, like it kind of went to a 3.5 because once I get past the ending, like the rest of the film really is beautiful. And there are so many important and beautiful messages and themes. But
and this is high for you for a slice of life movie.
Yeah, it is. It actually reminds me a lot of a movie called Patterson. Is a Jim Jarmusch movie starring Adam Driver. But it's about a poet. It's a day in the life of throughout a week. It's a lot of similar like kind of things.
Interesting.
But I like this better.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, the ending. What did you think about the ending? Did it work, not work?
So my main issue was, and it's kind of ironic because we've already talked about how the whole movie was about slow living and stuff and experiencing it. But the whole time I kept thinking this should be a short film.
Oh,
This shouldn't be a feature because not enough happens for it to be a feature. Like some of the movie is literally just an exact repeat of the last day. And it's kind of like, I get that that's the point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It sort of felt like, okay, you've made the point. Now I'm ready to move on. Mm-hmm. But it's so complicated. It's so complicated. So I'm like, I get it, but then also I get why you're doing it.
Are we supposed to move on? That's
But,
that's
like,
the whole point.
Exactly. Where I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Maybe
So
I mean
it was really mixed there.
it's embodied by like the phrase that he tells his niece, right? Later is later, now is now.
Yeah.
And
That
we
was
just
cute.
we just keep wanting to get to the later. Like, okay, so what happens next? What happens next? But
I
he's
mean,
like,
and that's kind of
you
how
just need to appreciate the now.
that's how you like watch a movie. But anyway,
I felt the same way though.
I did feel like it would be stronger as a short film.
Yeah.
Like it would have been better. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. So the whole plot with the niece was definitely the best part of the movie. I loved every scene with the niece. I loved like seeing him through her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could see her like admiring him, but at the same time being like a little embarrassed by him. And it's definitely because of the world she comes from.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it's revealed who his sister is, she's like in this nice car with a driver. And it's like, oh, clearly he came from a really wealthy family.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very intentionally chosen this life. And then there was a line where it was sort of implied that, like, she says, you should visit dad. He's not like how he used to be.
Yeah.
Or he won't treat you the way he used to.
And she says like he doesn't remember anything anymore or can't recognize anyone anymore. So it's implied that I guess he has like Alzheimer's or something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And but it sort of implies like I wonder if he was abused.
Yeah.
By
I
his
picked
dad.
up on that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like he's very intentionally stepped away from that world, probably because of the way he was treated.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't like that. And he wanted to, like, do the opposite.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see the niece see both of those worlds and realize, like, oh, I can, like, choose my own next.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She can choose her uncle's path or her mother's path. And so it was really cool to see, like, her kind of like going through that, but it was such a small part of the movie.
I know.
I wanted it to be way more of the
and
movie.
then then she goes
she
back
just
with the
leaves.
mom, and so it just kind of ends there, and
yeah.
Hirayama just kind of continues on in his regular day to day. Well, something else happens, which we'll talk about
At the
next.
very end.
Yeah, but with the dad, or with his dad, kind of in that comment about he's not like he used to be. It made me almost wonder, like, is Hirayama actually like more than out of some kind of virtue, like deciding like, oh, I'm gonna live this way, and kind of break away from the way society's moving? I was kind of wondering, like, is he just running away?
Probably.
And then that kind
He's not facing his demons.
yeah, because he like refuses to go see his dad, who's sick, right? And part of me was like, does that undercut kind of like the beauty of everything that we've established so far? But it's very human also, right? Like the kind of life he lives is so radical in a lot of ways that, like, how does someone just kind of get there by accident, right? Or just kind of naturally? Like that's not the way we naturally flow.
I mean, the way that he's chosen to live, it's clearly like healed him a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he's in a healthy spot.
Yeah.
From our perspective. But yeah, he's choosing to not face the things that probably haunt him.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that in the last shot even. He's smiling, but then he's also like kind of crying.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, what's going on in his head right now?
Yeah, as Nina Simone's playing. And this is the second movie I've seen this year, I think, that ends with Nina Simone, because other
Really?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to ruin, but if you guys have seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. And it's not the full song like this one, but yeah, that last shot, I don't know, what did you feel when you were watching that last shot? And
I mean, I definitely felt like this is him choosing to be happy.
Yeah.
He's choosing to move on, move forward, and now is now, right? But at the same time, there's still things from his past that he's not facing. That's still going to come up because he's not facing it. And so even though the life that he's living is positive overall, he is still running away from his past in a way. And that's how I felt. That's like the feeling I was left with at the end.
So part of the reason why, like, I think this movie could have easily been a 4.0 for me, but the whole ending and then that last shot, I mean, it hangs for the whole song of a static shot of him just like kind of
She's a good
listening
actor.
to music. Yeah, he was great. But I was watching and kind of like just left confused, like why, like we've not seen him be emotional the whole film.
Well,
right?
no, because he cries after his sister leaves.
So between all of that stuff, so after the sister leaves, then the whole thing happens between like him and that bar owner. Is it because he has feelings for the bar owner? Or is it because his niece left?
He likes her.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And then so he sees like her embracing a man, and so he's like all distraught now.
Yeah.
But it's clear like he's had a lot of opportunities. He's engaged with her a lot, right? Because it's not the
But he's
first time.
shy.
Man, I don't know.
Because he even says like, he's like, oh no, we're not like that. Oh no, we're not like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
because when he's
clearly like,
because when he's like talking with the ex,
yeah,
turns
yeah,
out he's
yeah.
the ex-husband, right?
Exactly.
I don't know. It was very like confusing and like it. I mean, he's single by choice, right? Like he's gone to this bar. He's seen her a lot, but he's never made any effort or kind of made any
I mean, he
moves.
goes like every day. That's effort.
But he's not like asked her on a date or asked to like, go
Because
hang
he's
out.
shy.
And yet he's so distraught by the fact that like there's some man in her life. I
Even
don't know.
like him interacting with his niece at the beginning, he's so shy around her,
Yeah.
and he's like so scared of like waking her up, and
Yeah.
he's like tiptoeing around, and he's like, you can so see how like scared of people he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like used to being alone. And yet what's interesting is that like, even though he's like that, he makes this effort to connect in those small ways. And like one great device for that I thought was like he's cleaning the toilet and he comes across like a tic-tac-toe
the tic-tac-toe,
thing.
it's so
Yeah,
cute.
and then like every day he goes back and, you know, like plays this game with someone we never know who that is. And he doesn't ever know who that person is.
But they did write thank you in English.
Yeah, oh, that's true. So maybe it was a tourist or something?
Maybe it was an English
Ooh,
person.
I didn't even
know.
catch that. Yeah, that it wasn't in Japanese. Yeah, so he's still like reaching out in his small ways. But yeah, that whole ending, because the reaction just seems so extreme for what didn't seem to match the rest of the tenor of his life. And
I felt like it was bubbling up.
then like the whole thing with the ex-husband when he starts playing shadow tag with him, I thought was
That was
kind of,
cute.
I don't know. I thought it was like a bit contrived. I was like,
Aw.
oh, this is so trying to be like heartwarming and
It
whatever.
was
but
cute. That's
you-
funny. I
oh,
didn't even
really?
feel that. I felt like it was natural.
Yeah. And then so after all of that, then this scene happens. I kind of was like, oh man, I don't even know what he's feeling. Like, why is he having such a big emotional moment? Like, every day he's listening to music, right? Maybe he just loves that song, which I love that song. So, like, I can understand that. But so I was just kind of like not really connected to the emotions he was feeling. And I think that's why at the end, I kind of felt like it feels maybe a little forced, or it feels a little too like I think you said the strings weren't really connected enough for me to really like connect in a deep way, you know? And
Well,
so,
I think it's a perfect example of like the movie's called Perfect Days, and it feels like he does have perfect days. And then it ends with him showing more emotion, but he's still trying to smile. And it's sort of that realization that like, oh no, his life's not perfect. Like his days are not perfect. And that's like kind of leaking out. Him trying to like be happy and choosing to smile. You can only do that for so long.
So is the ending kind of like a tragedy?
It's sort of like things from his past bubbling up, I think.
Or is it about him making a choice no matter what's going on in your life that
To
you
be
need to
happy.
see the positive? You know, no
Yeah.
matter how bad your day is, that
Yeah.
you choose to make it a perfect day.
Yep. I think it's a mix of those two things.
Okay. I do wish there was more of an arc. I
Yeah.
think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Like it
I wish it had
never-
tied together.
Yeah, it never really feels like he learns or changes in any way, even if it's small, right? It just seems like he kind of just stayed the same. And that's where it just falls a little flat for me and
Yeah.
almost like a missed opportunity.
I
But-
basically, once the sister left and the niece left and he's crying, that to me was like the dark night of the soul. And then the rest of the movie after that, I was kind of like, I didn't really like it.
I almost wish that whole scene with the bar lady and the ex-husband didn't happen.
Yeah, it was kind of just,
Because-
it didn't fit.
Yeah, because after the sister leaves with his niece, if you know you have like a very short scene and then like he goes to the car and then he cries,
It
I almost
felt-
feel like that would have been more powerful.
Yeah, it felt like everything was culminating to that. Or even just like him actually going to see his dad.
Yeah,
That would have been crazy,
yeah.
you know?
Even if he doesn't say anything, right?
Yeah,
Like,
if he just like
we don't
went
even-
in
Yeah.
and then left and then cries in the van,
Oh,
like that would have been so powerful.
that
but-
would have been so good. Yeah.
Oh well.
Well, what I did get from Wim Wenders in his interview was he kind of tells us a little bit of his backstory, which he says that
That's cheating.
And this wasn't written into the script, but he said that he imagines that this character had like, you know, this love for music and then this tape recorder and, you know, tape player. And then, you know, so he grew up in the 70s loving this music, and then he becomes like a businessman and kind of like forgets about this music and his tape cassette player. And then like maybe becomes like a wealthy man or something like that. But then one day finds this cassette tape player in the attic again, and is kind of like reminded of kind of his past and his love for music. And then so he kind of like walks away from that life. And so that's why like the sister is kind of like, are you really like a toilet cleaner? You know? And then when he says yes, like she almost has this like look of disgust, right? Because they obviously come from like a well-off family. Yeah. And then maybe that's partly why the dad like, you know, has kind of like outcast him, or they have like this estranged relationship or something like that. Maybe because he walked away from, you know, what society deems like success and all these things. So yeah, there's something interesting there about like the fact that he used to be a wealthy business owner that kind of makes it even more powerful, the choice that he made, right?
Yep.
It wasn't like he was uneducated and just like this is all he could do in his life. And we don't get that from the movie anyway. He's obviously well read.
Yeah, he very intentionally left that life.
Yeah. So yeah, 3.5. Do you feel
3.5.
still locking in at a 3.5?
Yeah, I think the movie was a 4.0 up until that moment, and then started to go downhill for me.
Yeah. So
I think 3.5 is still what I'm gonna sit at,
Yeah.
even though like I did like the movie a lot. Like I really liked it.
yeah.
So, and maybe I'll heart it.
3.5
Give it a little heart on Letterboxd.
Letterboxd. All right. Well, if you guys got to see the movie, comment, let us know what you thought.
Yeah.
And you know, you can follow us on
Spotify, Letterboxd, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. I always forget.
Yeah. And you know, this is a new podcast, so let us know if you guys are enjoying this. We really appreciate you guys like subscribing and liking, and you know, if you like
Give us
it,
movies to watch too.
Yeah.
If you want us to review a movie.
Yeah, and next week we are going to be reviewing Conclave, which is releasing, just opening. And so if you get a chance, watch that and join us next Thursday as we continue our quest for the 5th star.